Hi, Kavita.
Hi, Anand.
We are back from IBC, which is the International Broadcasting Convention 2022, which is a conference held every year in Amsterdam. And we were supposed to go last year, and then they cancelled it. And we are back in Bangalore after our visit. And we're going to spend today breaking down IBC, what it is, what we liked, what we took away, what we didn't see. And before I get into what IBC is, how are you?
I'm good. I'm back from a little bit of an extended break after IBC. Stayed back in Amsterdam. Spent some time with my school friend, Padmini, who went out of her way to make our holiday and our stay so memorable. And I'm happy to be back, but I must say I was dragging my feet this morning because after staying out for so long, coming back to the grind is tough. So I keep wondering about work from home and how it impacts all of us. It's something that we really need to figure out long-term impacts of how it affects our psychology. But yeah, I'm happy to be back. How about you? How are you?
Very, very, very happy. Always good to travel. As you know, early in the Voiro podcast, we spent a lot of time talking about AdTech, which was a conference we went to at IBC, in Delhi, sorry. And I know this about you and I know this about me. We are conference nerds.
Oh my goodness.
Earnest attendees who sit in sessions and raise your hands when it gets to the Q&A section. And so I know a lot of people who are usually smoking outside and talking about how conferences are stupid. I know that we're big fans of conferences.
Very true.
And it's always interesting to take people like us who are fans of conferences and go and attend possibly one of the biggest conferences in our industry, in the world. So before we get into what we saw and what we liked and what we took away, thought I'd take a minute to tell everyone what IBC is. So IBC is the International Broadcasting Convention. It's been held for, I want to say, more than a decade or two.
We met somebody who's been attending this for the last
20 years.
Yeah, 22 years. Yeah.
In Amsterdam every year. And keeping in tune with the topic of broadcasting, this is a massive conference and it's also very broad-based. So there are three very clear arms or wings of the conference. One is all things content production. One is all things content distribution. And the third part is content monetization. And safe to say that while we spent most of our time in Hall 5 and the innovation stage and the segments of the conference that are closer to us, when I say closer to us, I mean closer to Voiro and therefore software, OTT, CTV, the stuff that we talk about regularly on this podcast, we did spend a little bit of time on the other end of the floor, content production and hardware, and I could have spent all 4 days over there.
Yeah, you were like a kid in a candy shop.
Absolutely. The latest cameras, the latest lighting equipment, the latest sound equipment. And the first thing that hit me on day one, and I know you were kind of looking out for this because you've been at IBC before, is you sat back and watched my jaw drop because it's clearly future tech on display, and anyone who geeks out over cameras or equipment is going to have a field day. I've also forever changed my definition of what a stall is.
Yes, I saw your face when we walked in and we checked in from Gate G, where there was Google and AWS and Amagi's stalls, and they were like little offices plonked, and they were so huge.
Yeah, I mean, these are not stalls.
Yeah, they're not stalls.
These
yeah.
are not stalls.
Yeah, they could have people live there. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
I went into Google stall and about a minute in, I was still in the stall, walking. And it looked like Google's office.
Yeah, and they had a cafe.
It has a cafe. There were stalls that had bars and bartenders. I was offered drinks just because I walked past a bar. Of course, you have to be polite.
Yes, and you had to partake.
There were stalls that were multiple stories high and had conference rooms and clearly works of art.
What about Mr. Sister, the cafe?
There was a cafe
called
Mr. Sister. There were multiple cafes within IBC.
And you get a hot meal in those places.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We did, and I'm not exaggerating, about 25,000 steps on average just at the conference every day. And it was very exciting. So IBC is all about content production, content distribution, and monetization, which, as we know, covers the entire value chain of our industry.
Yeah. Speaking of value chain, and I was telling Leena this as well, I learned a new term, and I'm pretty sure it's an industry-wide term that I'm just coming around to, which is glass to glass, right? And that's basically trying to explain the entire value chain of content production, monetization, distribution, and everything in between. So the first glass is the glass that actually captures the content, which is your camera. So it could be on your phone, it could be on a huge, what are those called? What, dollies and steady cams or whatever else that we saw everybody using. And the end glass is the glass that you watch it on, which is either your TV or your phone or on your from your projector glass, whatever. So that whole concept of just sort of tying it in from glass to glass gave me a nice little tidy view of this very nebulous and messy value chain that has so many things that are like kind of branching out in every vertical that we saw a lot of examples of at IBC this year. What were your favorite sessions?
Oh, many. So I'm hoping that I describe this in a manner where people can visualize what it was like for us.
Yeah, for everybody who's listening in, normally when you come back from a conference, you write an email to everybody and you tell them, hey, the conference was good. Here are my highlights. Here are the top lines. Here's our next action points. But Anand Gopal in our office has sent us a multiple slide presentation with photographs as tent poles of every day, which includes coffee, croissant, us cycling somewhere, and has tried to make everybody feel a part of this entire magnum opus. I was so surprised when I opened that presentation, but it's a great walkthrough, and it's going to be something I'm going to keep for some time, because anybody else attending a conference, I'm going to demand this of them, saying, where is this immersive experience of a...
It would have been wrong to make that deck and not have a slide dedicated to the croissants and coffees.
I agree.
It would have been criminal to do that.
I'm carrying all of those croissants as an extra kilo or two right now, but my goodness, we were spoiled for choice every day.
So let me break down the sessions we attended day by day. Right. So the first day, of course, we had to find our bearings, figure out how to get around town. And even though we've been to Amsterdam before, the venue, which is called the Rai, is south of Amsterdam. So it's about a 10-minute train ride away. We were welcomed, of course, by Google, mothership. Google sponsored badges. This was one of those things that I was interested to keep an eye on, because Google's all over the news. They've just lost some ground in a couple of lawsuits, and it feels like the EU is gunning for them. They were just slapped with a $4 billion fine, and now they're being sued for $25 billion. And they are kind of the establishment that this entire industry is trying to combat.
And how tables have turned, huh?
Exactly, right?
From don't be evil, and
they've turned twice, right? Google's history stemmed from them being small players trying to take on the media industry, to them becoming so big, and now the entire industry is trying to bring them down. Well, Google's a big part of this industry, whether we like it or not. And whether it's Google, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Chrome, the browser, whether it's their OS, their stack of products pretty much defines a big chunk of IBC and the reason why most of those companies are there. So we have to give it to them. But Google had, safe to say, a massive presence, and they were there the minute we stepped in the door. From there, for me, the first few themes that hit me on day one were the fact that fast, CTV, SSAI, the trends that we've been talking about for a while are clearly not the future anymore. There were most sessions we attended talked about how to leverage these technologies. But the one simple fact that kind of underpinned all of this is the fact that everyone's just focusing on consumer retention. All the content players, all the OTT guys, all the broadcasters are saying, look, consumers are layered, complicated, and hard to understand. But if we don't focus on respecting that sophistication and respecting that complexity, and therefore focusing on retention, it doesn't matter what else. It doesn't matter what monetization opportunities. It doesn't matter whether you're SVOD or AVOD or free or fast. And so a lot of the one of the big themes that came out for me is the fact that these are now tools to understand consumers better, to figure out where consumers want to be. And then you have a choice, which is to play ball or not. And all the technologies around it are designed to enhance those experiences. Multiple exhibits talking about SSAI, which is server-side ad insertion, which is a method to make sure that the ad experience in a fast world is seamless for us, as it would be on any other internet device. And so there's no blackouts. There's no a spot where we're struggling for the ad to serve or fit into the stream.
Or there's no like wheel of death.
Yeah. So I think first two takeaways that hit me is that there is a call for a far more nuanced understanding of where consumers want to be in terms of the experiences they choose. And also the fact that consumers are not going to forgive you if your experience is not seamless. So the content distribution, the content monetization, as well as the ability to leverage tools stems from these. The first session that I really liked was by UKTV and Andy Isaac, who's the head of data analytics, who basically spelled out this theme and talked about the flow of data within their organization, which I thought was fascinating. So he spent an hour session going deep into how data flows within UKTV. So there's data from consumers, data from all of their touch points, from their CRM, from their CDP, which is their customer data platform. And the first thing he talked about is how he's created a strategy where that data gets distributed in real time to their technologies, to their partners, to their ecosystem, to be able to inform four things: content, product, users, and advertisers. It's a beautifully balanced view on how they all come together to give the consumer a win. And they showcase their data partner, which is a company called Piano, who talked about how they support television and broadcasting companies in being able to make sense of data and allowing the data to speak to them. It's a very balanced take on how to handle data to find revenue opportunities and not force fit revenue opportunities. And that was one of my favorite sessions from day one.
What I noticed on a different level between Piano TV and UK TV was the nice professional bonhomie that was there with these people on stage. I don't see that in India at all, right? We've attended AdTech, we've attended several events, but there is no hat tip to the person or the company that has brought you there and actually giving them their 15 minutes of due, right? And I think that kind of came out very strongly between Alan and the lady from
Andy.
Andy. And
Yeah.
what was the lady from Piano TV?
I forget
her
her
name.
name.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so from Piano TV as well. And they both spoke about stuff that they'd worked on together. And I really wish as an industry in India as well, we actually get there where we actually talk about our partners in a more favorable light
Yeah.
instead of just treating them as,
Yeah.
just some random vendors.
It was also a bit of a paradigm shift, I thought. Because we, of course, stood in a line by the stage after the session and walked up to Andy and asked him a question.
So nerdy.
Right? Hey, man, it's me. But it was something that for me stood out across IBC, which is everyone has a very deep focus area. So Andy was very clear about the fact that his problem statement is to take all of this data, take all of these touch points, weave together stories and trends and patterns, and focus on retaining the consumer so that somebody can monetize. He doesn't inform monetization. He doesn't work with his sales team. He doesn't work with advertisers. His whole point is, if I drop the ball on this, it doesn't matter how good they are at their job. And I thought that was a very interesting way to focus on the consumer. And this consumer first attitude is something that came back again and again and again.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
Day two, we spent the first half of the day attending a session by a company called viacess.orca, which I know you really liked. So Ainat Kahana was talking about how television companies can leverage existing assets to find growth opportunities, right? You can unpack every word in that topic, and it was very interesting. She talked about electronic programming guides. And this is the first time in the conference I heard someone say, it doesn't matter how much you know about the consumer and what kind of mood they are, what kind of sentiment they're carrying. What matters is if you can understand where they want to go, right? If someone's angry or violent and you want to like feed that sentiment, that's one thing. But how do you know if someone comes here wanting to be happy, wanting to unwind? How do you look into where that consumer wants to go and then leverage the tools that you have at your disposal? And I know that this was a session that you really enjoyed.
Yes, and it also popped up in our breakfast table round table meeting with Advanced Television, where they were talking about, I know this is an often used word, which is sentiment analysis, but they actually broke it down in trying to understand your user from various touch points, what they tweeted, what they liked, what they followed, and what they're watching, and trying to triangulate that to be able to serve up the right kind of content to them in the mood that they're in. Either, like you're saying, to translate that into something further, right? So for example, if it's election season, you know what they want to watch. And if it's something that, if there's a natural disaster or there's war, you also want to be able to educate them on what's going to come next, or maybe pacify them about what they can do with their lives, etc. So there's so much to be said about the concept of sentiment analysis, which we've kind of watered down over the years just to make sure that we're able to follow people around on their social media. But this, in being able to take your consumer to where they want to go without them explicitly articulating it to whatever they're punching into their TV screens, is something that was very fascinating to me. The other one was that in what viacess.orca was talking about, where they said you could manage all your multiple subscriptions in one window, this electronic guide. We keep having these conversations at lunch, and I'm like, man, they're talking about the same stuff. So what we are thinking about in our mind, they're already doing, they're already executing on it. So I felt like that's also the kind of themes that I found in across IBC, where yes, there was a smidge of what's to come in the future, but it was all about catching up with what they thought was the future. The future was already there; it was already present. So everybody was scrambling to make sense of it. Even SSAI or FAST or CTV, everything was all about how do you make delivery better? How do you make personalization the center point? How do you focus on your consumer and retention? And these were not the themes that were there in 2019. And what I really missed, and I thought was odd that it was not there, it was such a big push in 2019, was just content. People were breaking apart content at that time. They were talking about global versus universal concepts of content, right? And here there were very few sessions on the content in itself, because that aspect of created and they will come has been challenged big time, because we are spoiled for choice, and you keep talking about the paradox of choice, and we still don't have anything to watch. We say, come on, what do I watch? Nothing's on, right? We keep asking people, even in office, saying, hey, what are you watching right now? Although it's already on your screen, but you're using people to discover content because you're so overwhelmed by choice. So what UKTV is doing in terms of focusing on consumer personalization and retention is something that I feel like there's a lesson for all of us to learn. Focus on one thing.
Absolutely.
Just focus on one thing and make sure that you're being the best at it, so that everything after that is, where everybody else is focusing on whatever they're best at, instead of trying to do, something half-assed in the entire value chain.
Yeah. And this session, like you pointed out, while sentiment analysis has been watered down, it's been talked about very often, the one shift I noticed in this session, which I know we discussed right after the talk, was her point about how we're so complicated as consumers that our sentiments are going to change across the week. It's going to be dynamic, right? Which goes back to another point. A lot of people have said, what is fast? I don't want scheduled programming. I'm a cord cutter. But this whole industry is based on a simple fact, which is there might be pockets in the week where you want a laid back experience. There might be some people for whom those pockets occur multiple times. There may be some people for whom that doesn't occur at all. But there is something for everybody. And there is the technology to make this happen. And once that scales, someone talked about how fast is actually very expensive, but it's getting cheaper. And the whole point is sentiments can change, moods can change, choices can change. And at the end of this session, they made an interesting call for operators and OTT apps to actually work better in a far more constructive manner, where the operator can represent multiple apps in a single subscription and give consumers the choice to choose and toggle them on or off depending on your mood, depending on what you like today. If you know that Stranger Things is going to drop next month, you might want to switch just for a month and back, and your operator can actually enable that if they have the right partnerships in place. Very interesting session. Day 3 began with another interesting session by Omdia, the research company, where they talked about the advertising revolution and all things sport. Two gentlemen who spoke really fast, which is something that we are accused of doing quite a bit. But what I loved is the fact that they went deep into a single question, which is, who is this sports fan? Who's a fan? Like, what is this person all about? What else are they into? Where else are they spending their time, their money, their attention? And therefore, does it require us to have a deeper understanding of who they are holistically to be able to figure out what the revenue opportunities are within the world of sport? And of course, you cannot talk about sport and broadcasting without talking about FAST, free ad-supported streaming television, which, as we all know, is part of the favorite use case for FAST is sport and live sport. And so we are looking forward to reading that white paper and maybe having them on our podcast at some point. So we will be reaching out to them. So that was day 3 for us. And day 4, of course, we were invited to a roundtable by Advanced Television in the UK. And they talked about 2 topics. No surprises. The first one was fast. And the second one, which was actually far more eye-opening, was sustainability and the fact that we as a planet have not understood the definition of sustainability. She went around the room and asked everyone for their definition, and everyone had a different definition of sustainability.
So people spoke about, neutralizing their carbon footprint. Somebody else spoke about recycle, renewing people out. And then people that sort of condemned this whole dumping of technology and parts into third world countries. But, when she came around and she said, sustainable is just the word. What can you sustain? And if you talk about it in a business sense, as a business, what can you sustain? And when you think about it and you kind of zoom out into a macro view of the word sustainable within your business, how can you make sustainable profits? How can you have people work sustainably for you over a long period of time and be engaged, right? How can you sustainably deliver value to your end customers? So all of it is continuity. So whatever you do has, like every action has a reaction, right? And everything has its own momentum. So before we take a step in that direction, we need to figure out how is this going to impact me and my partners immediately, in the short term and in the future. And then ultimately it comes down to the planet, right? Whether, like I can draw a straight line between DevOps and saving the environment in the way servers are utilized today. And that is sustainability. It's not about these buzzwords of, being carbon neutral. And sustainability is a very personal journey for everybody. And every business has to look at it very differently. So that was very eye-opening for me. And we spoke about it continuously to whoever we met after that, because we were like, things were just opening up to us, and stuff that we buy, the homes that we live in, the kind of travel that we do, the kind of food that we eat, the kind of employee engagement programs that we have, the way we use our servers, how we code, how much we expect people to work and what kind of electricity is used there for, homes, this, that. I mean, it just went all over the place. So, and I'm still thinking about it. And I think one of the best parts for any speaker is for them to leave you with that thought in your mind, and you're constantly going over it and trying to apply it to your life. And I think that was extremely powerful. And she was so innocuous. She was sitting in the corner of the room. She was not part of the industry. She was speaking at IBC. And then she suddenly piped up and said, hey, I'm not from here, but I'd like to hear your views on sustainability. And it was such a U-turn to the conversation that we're having on fast, which again, I thought was great, because one of the points that was made in the first session on fast, which I think we should be unpacking as we go along in the year, is fast front porch or is it an ecosystem, right? Is it the entry to something, or is it already an ecosystem that somebody can actually make an end-to-end value chain in, right? So the jury's out there and what it is at this point in time, because everybody's trying to throw everything at this particular buzzword and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you expected to see and did not see at IBC?
So one is hardware displays. That was a little thin. I expected like some massive screens and 8K doing the rounds. The other thing, I thought we'd have a little more AR, VR, robotics, something gimmicky. I thought they'd be walking the floors, maybe us entering a room, doing something like that, or it was a little immersive. That wasn't there. There was some women dressed up as Formula One drivers because they had some kind of technology inside a car.
Yeah. There was no VR on display.
No,
I was very surprised.
Me too. There was only one stall, right? There was doing like the screen behind.
Yeah, but that's still like studio technology. That's
studio technology.
Not consumer VR tech. No.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have been at CES for VR. I'm not sure.
Or maybe they're doing something at De Mexico. I don't know, but I was really surprised that there was nothing gimmicky on that front.
Yeah.
The last one was I already mentioned, which was there was absolutely no content dissection. Absolutely none. There was nothing. There was only audience delivery, personalization. That's it. There was nothing about what content to create. Earlier, I mean, the 2019 was about the ending of Game of Thrones and, decoding the entire tech that went behind it. None of it was here. There was it was a little shocking that it wasn't there.
The other thing I did not see a lot is anything to do with privacy. Given the year we've been having, and given the fact that Europe set the bar with GDPR, I thought you'd see something there, but I don't think anybody cared. Maybe it's the wrong conference again. But
also,
a lot of people just said, "Oh yeah, we're privacy first," and put it, and they focused on.
Yeah, I guess you got
consumers.
to choose. Like everybody was choosing their side of the battle, right? You got to choose. You're talking about advertising and creating advertising opportunities. I think privacy over there starts to become a slightly gray area, and it's like you have an asterisk over there saying all guidance is considered, right? Everybody is GDPR compliant and things like that. So what more are you going to talk
I mean,
about? there?
granted, it's all a function of what we saw and we consumed and we felt. But I expected a lot of people to say, "Oh my God, like my future is at stake because privacy regulations are going to come for me." I didn't see any of that.
I also loved meeting Archana Anand.
Yes.
It was such a great meeting. It was nice always to meet an Indian outside, especially a woman who's doing so well. And she gave us some massive insights
Oh,
into
she's taking that platform.
by storm.
Yeah. She's
and
done some
has some
extraordinary work.
ingenious ways of getting people to sign on in the US from college campuses where people are still trying to find their identity. And I remember you saying that this whole concept of trying to associate to a culture, especially in a US campus, becomes stronger because you want to belong, right? And so South Asian communities over there, kids there start to drift towards each other and they want to belong to a community and a culture. And Z5 is tapping into that emotion, which, as we all know, marketing and emotion is the best marriage. And the other one is going to Patel stores where all Indians are hanging out.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, even I've been there. I've shopped there too. It's not the usual marketing drive, and it's not something that you're saying, not questioning it. It's just like it's like an idea that everybody gets, right? It's great. So more power to you, Archana, and it was fantastic meeting you. Even though we squirreled you away across the corridor and had you escorted by a security guard.
Yeah.
But anyway, I enjoyed IBC like I did last year.
Yeah. On that note, we are looking forward to our next conference and more conferences and to everything that comes out of the trends that we saw. So thank you very much for listening. Happy to be back and recording an episode in our office. And as always, shout out to our team, Leena, Santosh and Gautam. Thank you everyone, and we will see you next week.
Bye.